Hey y'all, it's Kreeby. So I've done a few night shift videos before, but something about an empty parking garage just gets under my skin in a way I can't explain. Tonight, I've got 3 stories people have shared with me, and honestly one of them has been living in my head rent-free for weeks. Let's get into it. The camera didn't go dark. That's the first thing I want to be precise about. It went to static, which is different. Static means signal. Dark means nothing. Whatever was happening on level 4 between 2 and 3 a.m., something was producing interference, and I logged it every single night for 3 weeks before I finally went up there myself. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm the kind of person who keeps a log. I had a green composition notebook, and every entry included the timestamp when the static started, the timestamp when the picture returned, and the duration in minutes. 11 minutes. Every time exactly 11. I checked my math more than once. I'm not the type to round. Marcus, my supervisor, came in once a week to review the booth and sign off on my logs. 3rd week in, I showed him the notebook. I showed him the pattern. Bad connection, he said. Cable's probably loose somewhere on 4. I'll put in a maintenance request. He didn't write anything down when he said it. I noticed that. I kept logging. The maintenance request, if it was ever submitted, produced no maintenance worker. The static kept coming. 2:04 a.m. on a Tuesday. 2:11 a.m. on a Wednesday. Never the same start time, but always the same duration. 11 minutes. Then the picture came back clean, like nothing had interrupted it at all. The booth itself was a rectangular room about the size of a walk-in closet. 9 monitors mounted in 3 rows, a rolling chair, a space heater I wasn't supposed to use but used anyway. It smelled like old coffee and the particular staleness of a room that never gets real airflow. I knew every sound the building made. The elevator had a loose panel on the left side of the cab that rattled when it passed the 3rd floor. The stairwell door on level 2 had a hydraulic closer that took about 4 seconds longer than it should to fully shut. I knew these things because I listened, and I documented, and when something changed, I noticed. On the night I went up, camera 4 went to static at 2:17 a.m. I wrote it down. I checked the other 8 monitors. Levels 1, 2, 3, 5, the entrance ramp, the exit ramp, the booth exterior, all clean. I looked at the static on monitor 4 for about 30 seconds. Then I picked up my flashlight and my radio and I went to the elevator. The ride-up smelled like exhaust and cold concrete. The panel rattled when I passed 3, right on schedule. When the doors opened on 4, I stood in the elevator for a moment and swept the flashlight in a slow arc before I stepped out. That's habit. You don't step into a space you haven't looked at first. Level 4 was about 60% occupied that night. Mostly commuter vehicles left overnight, a few commercial vans. The camera housing was mounted in the northwest corner, and I walked toward it along the center lane, checking the cable where it ran along the wall in its plastic conduit. Nothing looked disturbed. No visible break, no moisture damage, no rodent chewing, which I had actually considered as a possibility and noted in my log. The conduit was intact all the way to the camera. I stood on my toes and checked the connection at the back of the housing. Tight, not loose at all. I was standing there, making a note in my book about the condition of the cable, when I saw the car in spot 412. It was a gray sedan, mid-size, older model, the kind of car that's almost impossible to distinguish from 50 other cars in any parking garage in any city. I had logged it during my initial lot sweep at the start of my shift. At that time, spot 412 was occupied by a gray sedan with no occupant. I had noted the plate. I noted all plates during sweeps. The person in the driver's seat was not there at the start of my shift. I was certain of that the way I'm certain of anything I've written down myself. I approached to about 15 feet and stopped. The figure was upright in the seat, facing forward, hands in the lap position. I couldn't see a face clearly from that angle. I called out, said I was security, asked if they needed assistance. My voice came out level. I was proud of that, though I understood that my composure at that specific moment was probably not the appropriate response. No answer. No movement. I came around to the driver's side window and shone the flashlight through the glass. Middle-aged man, maybe 50, Dark jacket, dark pants, hands folded in his lap exactly as they had appeared from a distance. Eyes open, completely still. I held the light on him for several seconds and watched for the rise and fall of breathing. There was none that I could detect. I knocked on the glass hard 3 times. Nothing. I got on the radio and called Marcus. It was 2:26 a.m. "There's a person in a vehicle on 4, I said. "Unresponsive. I need you to call it in." "Is it a medical?" he asked. "I don't know yet. Call it in." I waited by the car. I did not try to open the door. I kept the flashlight on the figure and I kept watching for breathing. At 2:28 a.m., the static on camera 4 cleared. I know because Marcus called to tell me, and I looked at my watch when he did. The police arrived at 2:51 a.m. 2 officers. They got the door open with a Slim Jim because the car was locked from the inside, all 4 locks, and they checked the man's pulse and called it in as a fatality, probable cardiac event. Then one of them started running the plate on his radio, and the other one walked the perimeter of the vehicle with a flashlight. He stopped at the hood. He put his hand flat on it, then crouched down and looked underneath. He stood up and he looked at me. "This car doesn't have an engine," he said. I told him I didn't understand what he meant. "Hood's empty," he said. "Battery, engine block, all of it. Just a shell. Car's not drivable." I looked at the plate number in my notebook, the plate I had logged at the start of my shift, during my sweep, when spot 412 held a gray sedan with no occupant. I called Marcus again. I asked him how long that car had been in spot 412. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Which car?" I described it. I gave him the plate. He said, "That spot's been empty for months. We had a car towed out of there in the spring. Abandoned vehicle, no plates." I read him the plate number from my notebook. He said, "That plate doesn't exist. We would have flagged it." I looked at what I had written. My own handwriting, same pen I used all night, same notebook. The number was there. I had logged it at 10:45 p.m. during my opening sweep, before anything happened, before the static, before any of it. Which means the car was there before the man was. The man arrived during the 11 minutes I couldn't see. The car, somehow, was already waiting for him. The man had no identification on his person. The coroner's report listed cause of death as cardiac arrest. Time of death was estimated between 2 and 3 a.m. I put in no notice. I just stopped going back. The footsteps started on level 3. I know that because I just finished logging the ticket dispenser on level 2 and I was climbing the access ramp toward 3 when I heard them, slow and heavy, directly above me on 4. Boots on concrete. Each step deliberate, maybe 2 seconds between them. I stopped. They stopped. That detail matters. The stopping. Because I told myself right then, out loud to nobody, acoustic echo. Parking garages do weird things with sound. I had studied enough physics to know that. I was finishing a mechanical engineering degree at the time, working the midnight sweep 4 nights a week to cover textbooks and rent. I believed in cause and effect. I trusted what I could measure. So I noted the time in my log, 12:41, scribbled possible foot traffic, level 4, and kept walking. They started again the moment I did. Okay, someone else was in the garage. That happens. Travelers come back from late flights, find their cars, leave. The garage held around 800 vehicles across 7 levels, and even at 1 a.m. there was occasional foot traffic. I picked up my pace slightly and listened. The footsteps above me picked up too, matching my rhythm exactly. I stopped again. They stopped again. I want to be clear about the geometry here because it matters. The garage was a linear structure, not a spiral. Each level was a straight slab connected to the next by enclosed stairwells at each end and a central access ramp. If someone was walking the floor directly above me, I would hear them roughly as a reflection, yes, but the reflection would lag, not sync. Sound takes time to travel. What I was hearing had 0 lag. It was simultaneous. I took out my radio and called the booth. Marcus was working the front gate that night. "Hey, did anyone badge in on foot in the last hour?" Static, then his voice. Negative. Nobody on foot since 10-something. Why? Just doing my job, I said. Checking. I stood still for 30 seconds. Silence. Then I walked again, 6 steps toward the stairwell at the far end of level 3, and the footsteps resumed above me. 6 steps, 2 seconds each, matching mine. I climbed to 4. Empty. Every bay I could see was either a parked car sitting cold and dark or open concrete. The air up there smelled like exhaust residue and the damp that never fully leaves a covered slab. That mineral concrete smell mixed with old oil. I walked the entire length of level 4 with my flashlight out. Nothing. No one. I checked behind the support pillars because I'm not an idiot and someone hiding behind a column was still a rational explanation. Nothing behind any of them. I stood at the center of level 4 and waited. From somewhere above me, level 5, a single slow footstep landed. Then another. I felt something I don't have a clean engineering word for. It wasn't fear exactly, not yet. It was the specific discomfort of a system behaving outside its parameters. I was the only person in that garage on foot. Marcus had confirmed it. I had checked 4, and still it was 1 floor up. I went to 5. Same result. The footsteps moved to 6 while I was climbing. I checked 5 completely, found nothing, and the footsteps were waiting for me on 6 before I even reached the top of the ramp. By this point, my notes had gotten terse. 108 sounds persisting, level 6. I wrote it down because writing things down was how I stayed methodical. If I stayed methodical, I didn't have to sit with what was happening, which was that I had no explanation. Not even a candidate explanation. I had tested acoustic echo and eliminated it. I had tested a second person and eliminated it. What I had left was a sound source that moved in exact synchrony with my movements and stayed precisely 1 floor above me no matter where I went. The roof was level 7. It was open to the sky, no vehicles allowed up there, just emergency signage and the HVAC units and the concrete barrier at the edge. I had been up there maybe a dozen times during sweeps. It was always empty. I climbed the stairwell from 6 to the roof. The footsteps were already there when I pushed the door open. Or rather, they had been there. The moment the door swung inward, they stopped. No final step, no trailing echo. Just silence and the low mechanical hum of the HVAC units and the distant sound of a plane somewhere above the cloud cover. The roof was empty. I swept my flashlight left, then right. Nothing. The concrete up there was pale gray and mostly dry except for one area near the northern edge where the drainage had been slow. That patch was maybe 15 feet long, darker than the rest, slightly damp. I walked over to it. Boot prints, 2 of them side by side, facing the barrier wall at the edge. Whoever made them had been standing right there, both feet together, facing out. The treads were deep and clear, the kind of pattern you get from work boots with aggressive grip soles. The mud in the impressions was dark and had a slight sheen to it, still fresh enough to reflect my flashlight beam. I turned around immediately and looked at every inch of that roof. The stairwell door behind me, the other stairwell door at the far end, both HVAC housings, the low concrete walls along the sides. There was nowhere to go except back through the doors or over the barrier. I went to the barrier and looked over. It was a 7-story drop to the service road below. No ladder on the exterior. No ledge. No fire escape on that side of the structure. I went back and looked at the prints again. Just the 2 of them. No approach. No retreat. The wet patch was roughly 12 feet across and the prints were near the center, which meant that if someone had walked to that spot from either direction, they would have tracked through the wet area and left a trail leading in. There was no trail, just 2 prints side by side, facing the edge. Someone had appeared at that spot, stood there, and then ceased to be standing there, and there was no path by which they could have arrived or left. I stayed on that roof for 4 minutes, which I know because I logged it. Then I went back down to the booth and sat with Marcus until my shift ended and I did not do another sweep that night. I wrote up my notes in full and handed them to the shift supervisor the next morning. Framed as a security concern, possible trespasser, unexplained sounds. He read it and told me the drainage issue on the roof had been reported before and the boot prints were probably from the maintenance crew. The maintenance crew, he said, work days. I looked at the access log for the roof level. Keycard entry only, logged automatically by the system. My badge had accessed the roof at 1:17 a.m. Before that, the previous roof access on the log was 11 days earlier, at 9:42 in the morning. Those prints had not been there for 11 days. The wet concrete would have dried. The mud would have crumbled to dust. Those prints were fresh, made that night, by someone whose boots had recently been in muddy ground, standing at the edge of a 7-story drop, with no record of ever having been there. The first time he pulled up, I thought he'd taken a wrong turn. Nobody pays for a full night of parking at a hospital unless they're visiting someone critical, and critical visits don't happen like clockwork. But he did. 11:47, every single night, for almost 3 months. Gray sedan, same plates, same slow roll up to my window. He'd pass the bill through without looking at me directly, and I'd push the ticket back, and he'd nod once, like we'd agreed on something. Never said a word. I'd hear the car ease up the ramp, and then nothing. I work nights because I like the quiet, because it suits me, because the hospital parking garage at midnight is one of the loneliest places on earth, and I find that comforting. I am telling you that so you understand I am not someone who spooks easily. I am not someone who reads into things. But something about that nod started getting under my skin around week 3. It wasn't unfriendly. It was patient, like he was thanking me for something I hadn't done yet. I started logging him. Just in a notebook I kept beside the register, nothing official. I wrote down the date, the time, the plate number. Force of habit more than anything, the same way I log cars that park too long or vehicles I recognize from incident reports. Around the 5th week, I started noting which level his ticket was stamped for, because the tickets print the target level based on availability. Every single ticket said Level 2, Section C. I didn't think much of it until I started noticing he never came back down. I know that sounds strange. People leave all the time without me seeing. The exit is automated and I'm not always watching the feed. But I started paying attention. I'd watch the Level 2 camera after he pulled in, just for a few minutes, and his headlights never swept back toward the ramp. I told myself he was leaving before I checked, or that I was missing it. I am not a paranoid person. I genuinely tried to explain it away. Around week 7, I said something to my manager, Deb. She came in early one Thursday and I caught her by the booth before she went upstairs. There's a regular, I told her, guy in a gray sedan, parks in Level 2, Section C every single night. I've never seen him check in with the hospital or come back to his car. Deb looked at me with that expression she saves for things she doesn't want to deal with. You running a surveillance operation down here? Just a notebook, I said. It's a little weird, that's all. She told me she'd look into it. The way she said it meant she probably wouldn't. I kept logging him. Week 8, week 9. He always handed me a 20. The fare was $14. He never waited for change. The bill was always crisp. I started noticing that too, the way you notice things once you've decided something is off. The bills weren't just clean, they were stiff, like they'd come straight from a bank envelope. Same crease every time, folded once lengthwise. At the end of week 11, Deb actually came back to me. I could tell by her face that she'd looked into it, and I could tell by her face that she wished she hadn't. So I pulled the garage records, she said. She was holding a printout. Level 2, Section C. I waited. That section has been sealed since the structural repair. 6 years ago. There was a partial collapse during the work. Nobody got hurt, but they poured a wall across Section C and it's been closed ever since. It's not on the active map. The ticket system shouldn't even be assigning spaces there. My hands went cold. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. I mean, I looked down at my hands on the counter and they had gone the color of old wax. The tickets, I said. His tickets printed Level 2, Section C. The system can't print that, she said. That section code was removed from the database. I had IT look at it this morning. There is no active code for Section C. The printer would have no way to produce that designation. I thought about the nod. I thought about how patient it was. That night, I didn't get out of the booth. I don't care how that sounds. I sat in that booth and I watched the clock, and at 11:47 his headlights appeared at the bottom of the ramp and he rolled up and stopped and the window came down. His face was exactly the same as always, neutral and calm. He held out the 20, folded once, lengthwise, crisp as paper from a printer. I didn't take it. I couldn't make myself move. He held it there for a moment and then he set it on the little metal tray and he looked at me, properly looked at me, for the first and only time. His eyes were fine. That's the thing that keeps me up. That's the thing I can't get past. His eyes were completely fine. He just looked at me the way you'd look at someone who was going to do you a small favor, calm and certain. Then he drove up the ramp. I called Deb. She called facilities. 2 security guards went up to level 2 and walked the whole level, including the wall that sealed off Section C. The wall was solid. No damage, no opening, no gray sedan. There were no cars at all on level 2. I found out later because I needed to know. I couldn't leave it alone. I went to the hospital's records office and I asked about any deaths in or around the parking garage in the last 10 years. The woman at the desk was kind about it. She told me there had been one. A man had died of a cardiac event in his car in level 2, Section C, the night of the structural repair. He'd been there before the section was closed, and by the time they found him, the wall was already up. They had to break through to recover the body. He had been parked there overnight. The records listed his time of arrival, 11:47. He had been paying me for parking in the spot where he died, in the section that no longer exists, in a space the system has no record of. And every single night he drove up that ramp and he did not come back down, because the exit he was looking for was somewhere that wall no longer let anyone go. The $20 bills are still in the register. I counted them after I quit. There were 63 of them, all folded once, all crisp, all identical, and when I laid them out on my kitchen table they smelled faintly of concrete dust and something older underneath it that I do not have a name for and do not want one. So yeah, next time you're cutting through a parking garage at night and you hear that echo that doesn't quite sound like yours, maybe just keep walking. If you've worked a night shift somewhere creepy, drop it in the comments. I genuinely read those. Subscribe if you're new, and as always friends, keep the lights on.